I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First thing on the agenda is the minutes. We only have minutes for December 21st.
So I haven't quite finished.
Well, go ahead and finish them then.
Well, I found quite a few, so probably we'll just hold off till afterwards and then I'll finish reading it afterwards.
Well, if you want to finish it now, it's up to you. I mean, I don't want to rush anybody.
No, that's all right. I mean, if we don't mind, I'll just wait till after and I'll sit here and finish and then I can go over what the,
Or you can submit changes and we'll do it at the next meeting. We're gonna meeting again next week.
Yeah, we'll have the other minutes next week.
okay,
So do the changes then. All right?
yeah, that way we're not holding everybody.
Yep. All right. Okay, next is water and sewer, and I think you're up, John.
Looks quick. Everybody has this? Okay, there we go. All right. We're in the middle of talking with Horizons about finalization of the design of putting the line in from the water plant to the lake. They are in discussion right now with the state. The state's looking not so well at digging through that swamp. They do not want to dig through the swamp at all. They express their feelings and they want them to go through the slip lining procedure from a point to the lake. And that's basically where they are right now. They're designing the engineering to go along with that. So they know basically what they need to do from here on. And then they need to design it so the state will accept their design.
John, tell me, what's a slip line again?
Slip line, they're gonna actually stick it, the new pipe within the old pipe.
Okay,
And that's basically, so that's basically, we're not digging up that swamp area, that area that we walked through out there.
right. Yeah, because we were talking, gonna have to dig straight down and then drill through.
Oh, yeah.
So with we were also talking about the 100-year pipes are probably pretty full of debris on the inside, right? Would they
So
have
what
to
they plan
drill
to
them?
do is, we plan to go back right up where Majewski's property is, right at the edge, where the edge of the swale is, where the cut is.
Mhm.
Then dig down onto the pipe there,
Okay,
cut out a 10-foot section of pipe after we block the other end,
okay,
and then physically clean that pipe. We're gonna actually pull a pig through it. The pig is basically, it looks like a big bolt
okay,
that has a sand chamber on the side of it. And you pull it back and forth and clean the material off the pipe.
so not that you're gonna cut the 10-foot section to give you access to clean to the
Exactly.
lake,
Yeah, the
Gotcha.
lake, yeah,
okay,
yeah. And then they're gonna actually camera it all the way back and forth to see what the shape, what condition the pipe is in before they do it.
nice,
You don't want to stick that new pipe in the bad pipe. That's
Right.
what comes out.
yeah,
So it's sort of like a real thin sleeve on the
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah, exactly. It literally looks like a bullet.
Yeah.
And it has sandpaper on the outside of it. So when they pull it with a chain,
Yeah.
it drags itself, and it's made of rubber, so basically it shrinks as it goes.
Yeah.
But I mean, the section that you aren't gonna dig up,
We're actually gonna dig up a 15-foot section.
but you're gonna put a sleeve on the inside.
And we're gonna put a sleeve, yeah, on the inside of it.
Okay, so they're gonna sand it first, then look at it,
Yep,
and then
exactly.
put the sleeve in if it's. We're
And they're
okay,
gonna- On
yeah,
either end, they'll actually seal the pipe.
yeah.
So
Well, I hope
that
so.
basically everything will be sealed on both ends.
Yeah.
So that's the way they're gonna approach it. It's probably gonna, in terms of savings, it's gonna be $50,000 to $70,000 in savings.
Okay.
Because they expected to go over budget if we were gonna go through the swamp. It's just impossible to dig. So it's like pushing sand up a hill and watch the sand come back in.
Right.
Basically.
So what's, if it's a 100-year-old pipe, if it's not any good, it doesn't,
Yeah, well, that's, they're gonna have to make that, the engineering people are gonna make that determination. I think, once you take the camera, I mean, the camera, they do sewer pipes with the camera. So they can go as fast or slow as they want, and you can see the imperfections down to, the size of a pinhead almost.
So we're not gonna use the same camera that they used on the sewer pipe?
Oh, no. Yeah, but I mean, from then on, I mean, there'll be no contact with the water.
Yeah.
The new pipe will go in.
Yeah.
So what they're planning to do is, when they get these two ends on, they'll pull the new pipe through the two ends. one end will be at the edge of that property.
Yeah.
And the other end will be at the intake. So when they get to the end of it, they'll actually seal both ends down and actually suck the pipe up. And we have to determine what we're gonna actually slurry or plastic or whatever we want to put in that pipe. In long term, engineering wise.
What's slurry?
Slurry, it's a cement slurry.
Okay, that's what I.
Yeah, it's, you have to look at it from a terms of it might actually erode the pipe. You may want to not want to do that.
Right,
You want something that's innocuous as possible.
sure. Yeah, because the lime or something in the pipe
I
might.
think when they put the slurry in, they basically put a liner in, and then they inject the slurry in around it.
Okay, so
So
they
when you
basically put a
put-
form in there and then inject it around
And
it.
then when you pull the liner out, you got a cement pipe.
What's the diameter of that?
It's 12 inch, but it's a big pipe. It's an old pipe too.
Is that gonna be enough if they put a liner? Still gonna be enough?
Yeah, it's gonna,
You're not gonna reduce it that much.
you won't reduce it that. It's kind of funny, when we had the problem that we had before, I had a 2-inch line going out there when we had the fire department out. And that supplied too much water.
I'll
I
be,
mean, we would do it 15, 20 minutes at a time.
has anybody, so nobody's ever scoped the lines that we're replacing, right?
No, not at
I
all.
wonder if they're down to like,
Oh, I think
Yeah.
half of my contamination problems are within the line, not within the.
Sure.
line.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
Yeah, I mean, I bet you, it's like a moss in there.
yeah,
And all that discoloration and all the black and everything else that I get.
It's
is
like the
coming
bottom
from
of the
inside
lake,
that
because that's
line.
what you're putting in there.
And when I
The
cycle
sediment.
it, if you measure out, it's all 1,000 feet, that's 2,500 gallons. Well, I do about 3,000 gallons a cycle. So 7/8 of that water is coming from inside the pipe.
sure.
It's not being cycled. I mean,
Right.
not really.
So per cycle,
Yeah.
what you're looking at is what's
It's
in the
just the-
pipe, not what's been pulled from.
Exactly, from the lake.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Interesting.
It's an interesting thing. So it's up to the state. Once I think they're gonna approve it. They kind of gave them a nod and said, yeah, this is what we want to do. And that's how we're gonna approach it.
Have you ever checked how much different, just out of curiosity, how much different the water tests right out of the lake like that as when it first comes out of your pipe?
When it comes out of the pipe, I've been keeping track of it the last probably 3 or 4 months. It's interesting what comes out. And like when we get the ice, the water goes clear.
Sure.
And then everything stratifies in the lake itself.
Hmm.
But when in the summer and when I have wind, that really whips it up. And you get a lot of debris and all kinds of material that comes in the pipe.
Hmm. Yeah, interesting.
It's an interesting thing.
Yeah,
Now, their plan is to go another 200, we're out 230 feet from the shoreline. If you've
okay,
ever been in that little cove.
yeah,
The problem there that it's only chest high mostly.
right,
And the area that we're in is probably just up to your chin. I mean, it's 4.5, 5 feet high when they
yeah,
have the lake down. So,
Yeah.
we're gonna probably go out a little further because as you get out, it goes to 8 feet. And as you get out, probably a little further, it goes down to 13 feet.
and that's what we were discussing the day that
Yeah.
Dave and I were up there, that
Yeah.
you're going like that additional
They-
200 plus
they're-
feet.
Yeah, exactly. They're looking
Okay.
at to go out another 200 feet.
Okay,
So that would entail, this black pipe that we're gonna be using floats if it has water. in it. So that would entail putting these weights on. They look like sinkers
sure,
that actually surround the pipe. And they move them back and forth every 20 feet. And they put it on the base of the lake. So you don't want anybody either hitting it with an anchor or you don't want anybody fishing line or anything like that.
so I guess that was one of the questions I was wondering, if we're going 230 feet further out in
Yeah.
than we usually keep people from. We're
Well,
just gonna have to regulate,
I'm still, if you ever look at that zone, I'm probably another 800 feet beyond that.
okay.
Yeah, I
okay,
mean,
sure.
I'm way beyond that.
So really, no one's really supposed to be in there
Yeah,
anyway.
Moss Flower, what's the name?
Yeah, Moss
Flower,
Lane.
Corvo. They're the 2 roads that come down that where that crossing point is.
Okay,
And I'm 800 to 1,000 feet away from my intake.
okay,
Now, how high is the intake off the bottom?
Right now, it's only 5.5 feet. Oh, actually, it was on the bottom until we repaired it.
right.
So when you put the new 200 and some odd feet out, how high is it gonna be?
It's gonna be in a concrete structure that
Right.
looks like it's a perforated structure.
So they can't hit it.
It looks like a dry well. If they hit this thing, they're gonna take their boat apart. It's
Sure.
gonna be down 10 to 12 feet from the surface.
Keep from debris coming in the pipe.
Yeah,
and stuff,
exactly.
Basically a head.
Yeah,
box.
and then there'll be a screen inside of that. So there'll be
Okay.
at the end of the pipe itself, there'll be a T-screen that's about yay wide, yay high. And it looks like a colander almost, but with fine wire that is crossed in a cross patch
Sure,
pattern. So that basically anything gets stuck, as you take the pressure off, it all drops off.
Okay, because that's what I was gonna say. Are we able to float that to the top to clean
Oh,
it?
no,
or
it's gonna be down there, so.
Right, it's
yeah.
gonna be secured, so
Yeah.
if nothing else, we'd have to have
We
at
don't
some
have-
point somebody go on.
hopefully,
So if you shut the water-
We
you
don't have
shut-
to dive down on the one we have now. We had a diver from Hanover help us the last time.
Sure.
But I mean, he was probably at chest height.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
when
if
he
you
was
shut
doing
the
work, he
water-
would blow the
You
water.
shut the water off completely going into the plant,
Well,
then
the,
everything will just fall off that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and they do have a design where they have an air, what they call an air stripper, an air
Yeah.
scrubber. So that we can almost attach an airline to it, you know, in 3/4 inch hose that you blow it out.
Boost it. and-
Exactly.
Okay.
So it's something that
Sure.
it's gotta be designed into the screens. The screen has this little add-on that they have.
Hmm.
And you actually, when you hit it, just let it bubble out, let it aerate out.
Nice. Yeah.
So will there be a transition from where the current line ends now and the extra 200 feet you want to go
Well,
up or?
Well, actually, there will be, there'll be a cone that actually catches it. They'll actually attach onto the old pipe.
Yep.
They'll go down to a cone and then they'll come right out the cone. And it'll actually be dry inside or whatever we want inside of the pipe itself.
Mhm.
Because we'll have compression fittings on either end. And then same thing in the hole. We'll have a compression fitting to compress down onto this pipe. I mean, there's no pressure in there.
Right.
It's not like we're dealing with 30 PSI or 100 PSI of pressure.
Just
There's no
gravity.
pressure in there at all. It's just static water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, you know, we'll have to look either sucking out or do something with it, so.
Right.
Now,
Interesting.
where the bypass, to save money, the engineer wants us to put the bypass in. It'll save us between $50,000 and $70,000. Because all the rules, David's making and everything else. He's looking at that. We may want to look at from Majewski's to the water plant of forcing it, using either a subcontractor of our own or doing it ourselves. So,
Of installing the line, you mean?
yeah, it's on the line. It's gonna be down to 8 to 9 feet and then have to go all the way at a flat surface, all the way to the plant.
Yeah.
And then go through the existing structures. There's 5 structures there now
Okay.
that are stacked on top of each other.
When you said forcing it, you meant forced labor?
No, I'd like to do that, but no.
I mean, force account?
Yeah, force account.
That's
So we
what
have
I
to
meant.
get approved by the state to do so.
Okay, it's just so it's a term for
Yeah,
our employees.
Gotcha.
Any questions at all?
What's the bypass we were talking about?
while they're doing the work, I'm gonna put a 2-inch line that's gonna be off where they're working. So that we can run the water.
Gotcha.
And the state's approved it already. We've already done it once. And they were happy with the results. So that we'll put this 2-inch line in while this work's being done, because probably from, let's say, late fall all the way through November, December, we're gonna be using that line.
And that has to be underground?
It's gonna be above ground, so hopefully we'll have it done before November, the end of November.
Mhm.
We can't count on winters like we had this year.
Yeah, keep the water.
Yeah, yeah, you can recycle the water. We've done that before.
Any questions?
So are we still on track to be doing this next fall?
Next fall. Probably, it could be started sooner. We could do June, July, if everything goes according to schedule. But I'm not counting on the state to,
You're gonna get all the designs done and go out to bid, and you're gonna do it and have mobilization, that's all gonna happen by June.
by June, July, yeah, that's all, hopefully.
And between
July and November,
and November, you're gonna complete everything in the lake down in the village.
yeah. Not to the village, no, to the water plant.
Sure.
To the water plant.
That you probably can do. I
Yeah.
don't know that you're gonna pull it off to have everything mobilized and operating, but.
We'll think positive.
Okay.
Hopefully, that's,
That's the goal.
We
Any
need
issue with
we need to
supply,
do that now.
material
Seems
supplies?
like an obtainable.
that's what we have to discuss in the next few meetings.
Yeah.
We gotta look into the future and see whether we pre-buy the materials, get the state to approve us to pre-buy the materials. And then have it on our own and then supply it to the contract to be installed. Because I think if we wait into the late fall in the next year, we're not gonna get any of these materials. Everybody's gonna be out there working.
Right,
There's
plus,
gonna be-
I think it's more cost effective for us to purchase them
Oh, yeah.
ourselves. And if we know what we're gonna need, there's an incredible supply chain shortage, right?
Oh, yeah,
So
well, it hasn't
yeah.
started yet. We've been keeping it
on
on.
the pipes, it hasn't.
Yeah, it
All right.
hasn't started, but it's
Nice.
going to.
Most everything else
Yeah.
has, so,
Oh, yes.
but yeah, if we could get ahead of the curve, it seems like it
But we're
would be
gonna wait till the final design goes through, and then we'll have the exact what our
the
needs will be.
exact
Yeah.
footage
Yeah.
and, yeah,
Yeah, just, well, it's more of the pipe, the sense of the pipe. It's not the sense of the fittings. The fittings will be there. All that
Sure.
stuff will be there.
The
that's what I'm
state has to
thinking.
approve that.
What are you gonna use the pipe?
The HDP,
The black stuff?
yeah, the black stuff.
Will that be determined on what happens with the,
Yeah, exactly. We're gonna weld together
will that be determined on
on their review.
of the
So that
condition of the
basically,
current pipe?
yeah, they'll go in and review everything, the state will. And then they'll go look at it and say, this is what we want. They do change things. I mean, we have to wait for everything to come back. A lot of times what the engineer want always isn't what the state wants, and then sometimes what we want too, that's basically what it's about. It's a happy medium in between. So I'm probably looking in a month to come back and see you guys.
Okay.
So, just to give you an idea, probably will go February, mid-February, the second meeting in February.
Okay.
Right.
Any other questions? All right, we're on to the transfer station review. Got,
Thank you, John.
So thank you guys.
I got two people. Well, John's gonna be part of the presentation, and I got Bonnie Bethune, the Northeast Resource Recovery, that's gonna be part of the presentation. Both of them are not gonna be on until 5:30, and then I got JR is gonna be here at 6, it's the earliest we can get here. So I'd
Want
like
to do the
do-
broadband?
Yeah, sale of town properties and broadband.
Okay, let's do the sale of properties first.
Okay, so far, we've completed 5 of the 6 sales that were conducted. 6th one is supposed to be done, I think Thursday or Friday this week. And we put into the bank 124,000, it's gonna go into the unassigned fund balance. So that's good. There's another 30,000 that's gonna go into the unassigned fund balance. That'll happen this week. So it still should help us to fund the capital reserves for this year. No other problems on that. There is broadband is the next topic. And I did consult with Hub 66. The state of New Hampshire, the money is available sort of for broadband work. There are only 4 projects submitted for the work for this year. And that's for some ungodly amount of money, something like $25 million. There is something like 10 or 15 million of that is for Grafton County, which is part of the committee I was working on. There is an additional $5 million for Canaan and some parts of Enfield, some parts of Lebanon, but majority of the work is in Canaan. And that's sufficient to do the entire town of Canaan. The state has not released the money yet. And they said, they told the applicants that they would be releasing it after the first of the year. So this is after the first of the year. They haven't released it yet, but there is no feedback of anything that's wrong with our application. Hub 66 is persuaded that we've got the best application and it's the only one that's really shovel ready. And then the other one is the one from Grafton County. That is having some political problems currently. New Hampshire Electric Co-op is making a big deal of not giving any money to governments, that they ought to be the ones installing the fiber optic. I will say that most of the new installations going on in the state are governments. They're being done with their own bonding and their own fundraising for it. In our case, it has no town money. So it's one of the issues, Dan, that you raised the last meeting we had the report. So just as long as the public knows that this is totally funded by Hub 66.
Absolutely.
It has no local money whatsoever in it.
Yeah, just
And the cost of it should be comparable to what everybody else is charging, except that it'll be available anywhere in the town.
So that would be complete coverage of the town.
And almost all of it will be fiber optic, so they're not gonna use the remotes anymore. They're gonna put fiber optic in from one end of town to the other.
So none of the,
Yeah, if they do, there'll be
Transponders.
very few of them,
gotcha, yeah,
only when it's absolutely ridiculous to run fiber optic.
out near Scott's house.
Yes, that's it. So any event, that's it on broadband. EDA, I don't know where we stand on it. I'll give you a report on that. We renewed the contract with Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Planning Commission to manage it through the state review process. Haven't heard anything back from the review process, but I also haven't got approval from the state review process. So we're still trudging our way through that, and hopefully it'll get done fairly soon. In all honesty, the hardest part of it will be the state review process. After that, it's EDA has already conceptually approved it and already has the money for it, so that shouldn't be an issue. We're still looking to do that this year, and the goal is to be working on Potato Road Bridge this year. And part of, go ahead.
They're gonna include to the railroad bed or the rest of it.
Yes. I mean, raising the road, yeah, everything's included in this new version.
Yeah, it's raised from the railroad bed right up through to where it passes the existing.
It won't be
bridge.
as high as the railroad bed, but it'll
Sure.
be high enough so it won't flood.
Yeah.
And then there'll be a large precast underneath.
Yeah, okay,
And the reason I was quizzing John about the process is lengthy on any of these grants. So it means that the plans, you have to have it engineered. That's what John's going through now. Once you got it engineered, it has to be approved by the people funding it. In this case, it would be the state of New Hampshire for DOT money and EDA for the federal side of the money. So they have to approve it. Once they approve the plans, then it goes out to bid, and that bid process usually takes 30 to 45 days to get the bids in, and then another 2 weeks to evaluate and make the determination. There's a process, a formal process you have to go through to do all that crap. At that point, bid is awarded, and usually there's a 30 to 60 day mobilization period to get all the equipment in place. It will be staggered on the EDA project. It will take all of the next 3 years to do it. So we'll start with Potato Road because it's got the engineering done. And then work our way over. And I don't know what'll come second. I'm going to guess that the transfer station bridge will come second. And then the trestles would come third, and the river will be last. And I think the board is aware that Owen Neely would like to know more about what's going to happen on the river part of the project. At this point, the only thing proposed on a river project is upstream from the track. So it's going up as far as, almost as far as the Eastman Road Bridge. Right around where Chapman's house is, and it'll be basically taking the curves out of the river and getting the debris so it won't catch in those spots. We've made at least a moral commitment that we would use some of the money to do whatever Ellen wants to do on his version, on his part of the river. He did put in a discharge swale in our property line last year, but the problem with it is when we had high water, it flooded back up the discharge swale. So it didn't really relieve it. It would relieve it if the water was so high that we had standing water up in the transfer station. It would relieve it to get it back in the river, but I don't know what other changes Owen wants, but once we get the award, we'll talk to him about whatever the changes are that he wants. In any event, that'll be in 2015.
But that has to be approved by the state,
25.
I'm sorry, 2025.
right?
It
Any
would have to be.
plans that
approved by the
Ellen
state.
comes up with has to be approved.
Yeah, and it's interesting that when we got the approval for the work we did previously, it was conditioned on doing more work upriver, which is highly unusual for DES to do that, but that's what they did. And there's about $500,000 or more that's set aside just for that work. There are a couple of hairpin turns up there that we would be not getting rid of, but we would make them more gradual so the water would flow. And then also there's some flood areas where we want the debris to flood off onto the flood area, so it gets trapped up there before it comes down.
Now, if you did a straight shot right down through with no curves,
Yeah,
Oh,
won't
it
be
would be
straight, it'll be
catastrophic.
a lot more gradual,
Yeah.
because there's a couple of.
they
really
do
serious
slow
points.
speed of
There's
the
one
water
bank
down.
of clay where that bank is eroding every storm, and it is right up against the road. So it's only a matter of time before there's a lot of problems on Orange Road that the result of the clay bank rolling down the hill. So that's a report on broadband and EDA, and you've got the report on the water project. And again, the report on EDA, the flood mitigation project. As I said, I think at the last meeting, but I'll repeat it again at this meeting, all the funding for that project, as the local share has already been funded. It's been funded out of the monies that were in the capital reserves for bridges. Even though we're doing more bridges and trestles, the fact is that we're using the same money for 3 bridges and 2 trestles as we would have used for 1 bridge on Orange Road, on Potato Road. So it's a really good buy for us, and it's all because of EDA putting in 80% of the money. So the rest of it's picked up by the state, and our share is 10%. So that's it on broadband, EDA, and I don't think there's any other. We're still waiting to hear about other funding in the public works projects. And you haven't heard anything further on?
Haven't heard anything there. Both monies have come into the state and they haven't done anything with it yet.
We have seen the allocations from the federal stimulus act for sewer, and that isn't promising. Basically, they took everything that hadn't been funded in the last 3 years and said, all right, that's what we're gonna fund, don't put any new applications. So if it was a sewer project we're trying to do, we wouldn't get anything, because we don't have any projects. We don't know what the water looks like. They said, I think they announced a month ago, please see these links for this money. And I went to the links and it doesn't say anything.
Yeah, some of them.
It says what the programs are, but it doesn't say anything about how it's going to be allocated, whether you can apply for new money or not. I'm counting on the fact that we are considered in progress only because we applied for and got the loan for the water project. If we're able to get money out of the stimulus money, then the goal would be to use the stimulus money instead of the loan and get rid of the capital funding coming out of the ratepayers, but still leave part of that money in the budget so we can build up a capital reserve for water and sewer. And we have almost squat for a capital reserve for water and sewer. Just to make the record clear on the squat for water and sewer capital reserves. The reason we have squat is because when that system was installed in the 60s and the 80s, it was installed with $1 million capital reserve account pre-funded. Pre-funded. The town of Canaan, in its infinite wisdom and mercy, did not raise the rates for 20 years. All they did when the cost went up was they took it out of the capital reserve. So when I was here, when I got here, there was a grand total of $35,000 left out of that $1 million. That's what the capital reserves. So there's plenty of blame to go around on that, but the long and the short of it was there wasn't any money.
I basically started with nothing.
It started with nothing back in 2010.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
So we made changes, all the changes we made to reflect on your report and what was part of it. We made a change. First of all, the state required us to do 2 things. Most of you are familiar with the fact that in 2010, we had a moratorium that had already been in place for several years where we couldn't hook up any new sewer connections because we didn't have enough sewer capacity. So at the time I got here, there were 25 pending projects that were looking for sewer capacity. The state, the town, through water system operators, worked with the state and Wright Pierce Engineering to design a system that would increase the capacity of the sewer system so we could get rid of the moratorium and have more sewer. And Dan was correct in stating somebody screwed it up. Because, and to make it clear, the state inspects our water and sewer systems every year. They come in and do the inspections. They look at our records every year. They get copies of our reports all the time. And if you look at the reports, it should have been obvious to the Sugar Plum Fairy that the formula for the state of New Hampshire for sewer capacity is based on you get so many gallons a day flow going into the rapid infiltration. So the number we were restricted to, I think, was 75,000. 75,000 gallons. At the time that this is all taking place about fixing the rapid infiltration beds, we were exceeding it to the tune of 15 to 20,000. So up to 90,000 a day going into the rapid filtration. It was in violation of the rules, in violation of the licensing. They said, you gotta fix it, you gotta expand the rapid filtration beds. The formula at that time, still is as far as I know, said to calculate your daily flow, you take the number of days that you actually flowed into the rapid infiltration beds, divide that into the total gallons put into the rapid infiltration beds, and the number has to be 75,000 gallons or less. So we increase the capacity of the rapid infiltration beds by about 25%. The only problem with that is we're only dosing it, only putting the effluent into the rapid infiltration beds about every other day. So rather than dividing it by 30 days, we're dividing it by 15 days. So the conclusion of this whole extravaganza of putting in rapid infiltration beds is that we have the double the capacity we need for the village of Canaan. So if we replace the entire, put a whole new development into the village, exactly the same size, we would still have capacity left over. Because we rebuilt the rapid infiltration beds. So remember, it was inspected by the state. It was managed by a private company, water system operators. It was reviewed in design with Wright Pierce. And he's a guy that actually solved that problem. He being John is the guy that solved that problem and the chlorine problem. And what was it? One day, the first day you called me up, you made me come down to the office. So we had a problem on that it was being improperly dosed.
What he was doing was he'd sit on it for 3 days, then unleash and fill one of those. I mean, it's a pool, basically.
Yeah.
What if you do that, what happens with it? It takes a long time to drain down.
Sure.
So, but if you hit it slow, I mean, right now I'm averaging between 19 and 23,000 gallons.
Yeah.
That's basically 1/4 capacity.
And it's leaching out just.
And it's
fine.
leaking. If they come and they look at it, there's a wet spot that's about the size of this table, and that's it.
Excellent. So they're working well.
Yeah, they're really great. I mean, that's the thing. It's the engineer didn't look at it correctly. I mean, that's what
Gotcha.
happens sometimes. They don't make a judgment before they look at.
Looks good on, looks good on paper.
Yeah. well,
Yeah, like it all
Yeah.
depends on how people are.
Sometimes they call that job
I know.
security.
Yeah, they do, we don't.
Sometimes.
Okay, so that's a recap of all the grants. I'm gonna move on to transfer station.
Can you get questions? Can you
Sure.
ask questions?
Yep.
On the broadband, is that CARES or ARPA money?
Yes,
So, okay, so there are two
it's
separate.
all being called ARPA money at this point.
Okay, all right. So you still don't know the total, right? Or do you know the total yet?
Oh, it's a god awful amount of money for the state of New Hampshire.
Yeah,
Something like $50 million. And I think they were looking at $20 million just to get broadband to the towns, not in the towns, just to the boundaries. And then our proposals for something like $5 million. So that accounts for, something like a quarter of it. And there just wasn't enough time for the application. So there was one other town that's got a project going on with Consolidated Communications, and there's us. The consolidated one is very small. It's less than $500,000. And there's another one that's very small, so those are small. So we should be, I believe what he's telling us, that it's probably gonna be that way. Bonnie, are you on?
I am. It's nice to see you all.
Nice to have you here this evening.
Good evening.
Hello.
I thought I'd start off with you, giving the public, I could do one of two things. Either want to do the presentation of the numbers we looked at. If Bob asked me to look at the numbers again, I did. Before now that it's the end of the year. I've got updated numbers. I want to go through them with everybody in the community. And then I wanted to ask you to give commentary about what we're doing and whether it makes any sense or not. And then I got JR that's gonna come on at 6 o'clock, and he has his views that he'd like to share with the public. And then John to help out in terms of, there was a whole series of conversations about fear, when the prices fell out of the sky. There was a whole series of conversations with Michael Durfo about putting together a network of haulers. So I wanted to go through all those points, and specifically, I'm going to address tonight the finances of 4 different versions for hauling. Repairs, driver being stranded, and lack of a backup driver. So I'm going to focus, at least for the first 15 minutes, purely on the economics. Would you like to, if you want to get off, you can get off by going first and just talking about whether it made any sense or not to go through the approach we did to try to find an alternative for recycling when the markets tanked back in, what was it, 2017 or 18. You can do that, or you can let me make the presentation, which would help, and then take it from there and answer. I'd like you to be able to answer questions that the public might have or the selectmen may have, if that's okay with you.
Sure. I think if you go ahead and start with your presentation, that'll give me a much richer understanding of what you're looking at. And I'd certainly be happy to talk about markets and some of my thoughts that I've gathered since we started talking about this.
Okay, so your face is not going to be visible because I'm going to share the screen.
Okay.
At least I'm going to try to share the screen.
Hey, Mike, can you introduce Bonnie? I don't.
Oh, yeah, Bonnie Bethune, are you still using Bethune?
Yes.
Okay, Bonnie Bethune is the Member Services Coordinator for Northeast Resource Recovery Association. I had the pleasure of working with her when I was the director of the organization. And she is the go-to person, unless something has changed in the last 2 years. She is the go-to person to talk about new ideas and what the strategies are. How many towns do you represent now, Bonnie?
We have over 300 that we represent, mostly in New Hampshire. Most municipalities are a member of NRRA, but we go into Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, 1 member in Connecticut. Yeah, but my experience goes past NRRA. I actually ran a facility and ran a 75 cubic yard ejection trailer for MSW. So I do have some of that hands-on experience that I have not forgotten and pretty much use every day in what I do at NRRA. So that's helpful in our discussions, I think.
Do you know what your gross revenues are these days?
The gross revenues, 1.8 million went out to NRRA members in 2020. We're still working on the bottom line, and we run a just under $1 million budget. So 1.8 million in revenues out to our members in that time frame, and it's going to look so much better this year with the markets.
I think so. Okay, so I'm going to start with a spreadsheet, and I tried to keep it to one spreadsheet. Damn near impossible for me. My apologies. Okie dokie. So let's see if I can make this bigger. Bigger. So I'm looking at trash and recycling. I'm looking at how to move it. So there's a couple of different pieces beyond this. Well, first of all, there's the general operation of the transfer station. That's not included in this analysis. The disposal cost for trash is not in this analysis. We recently got word, we thought we were going up to $78 a ton, effective this week, And we're only going up to 76.50 a ton. So we have roughly 1,100 tons and it costs us $76.50 for every ton that we dispose of in the landfill. That's not part of this analysis. So what we're looking at is, okay, how much does it cost our labor cost, fuel, buying equipment to move material? So the first one is on trash. We have a roll-off, a live floor. This is a single roll-off, a live floor, and a tandem roll-off. So to go through on the single roll-off, the average weight in 2000, the last time we did single roll-offs was 9.75 tons. And at that time, it was actually being handled by Casella. 9.75 tons. Based on dividing this number by the 9.75 tons, is 120 pulls a year. This is the fuel cost, the labor cost, the truck and the box. That means to acquire the truck and the box, and it's on basically a 10-year cycle for both. This is what the cost would be, and the cost per trip is $136. That's assuming that it's going to White River Junction. I have a complicated spreadsheet that gives it all in detail, how much a gallon, how many miles, all the rest. But I'm trying to simplify it. If everybody wants it, call me, I'll send it. So based on that $136 a pull, that would translate to $16,000 a year for cost of using a single roll. Okay, so we'll go to the next one, which is tandem. JR wants to speak to tandem. He's basically not at all in favor of it. He's indicated that at a bare minimum, it's going to take another hour and a half to 2 hours to handle the tandems. It has to do with, you have to load and unload 2 boxes onto a trailer and a truck and get it to a landfill. Then you have to unload, separate the 2 boxes, put them in the landfill. And then after you're done, put them back on the truck and the trailer and get them back to the town and unload them. So the big increase between that number and that number over there is on labor, and there's a slight increase on fuel because it's another 10 tons going up. So the fuel cost goes up $8 a trip, and which is only a couple of gallons, and then the labor cost goes up to $141. You've got twice as much in terms of roll-off boxes to handle. I'm talking to Bob, he wanted to have 2 roll-offs on at any given time.
Not to go to London.
Okay, well, doesn't make any difference. I got a grand total of 4 roll-offs, 2 on trash and 2 on recycle. If you're gonna just swap, you still need to put a swap in. So that's the cost of buying that equipment, and it's $212 a pull. We got 1 pull that's 136 on a single. We got 2 boxes going out for $212. So that does make more sense. It's only another $80 to do the second pull. That's what the tandem is. Total cost drops it from $16,000 to $12,000. Okay, so we have the live floor, which is what we currently have. This number of 19.37 is the actual tons that we took last year from the town transfer station. Average weight from the town transfer station to the Lebanon landfill. That works out to 60 pulls. Same as over here, 60 pulls. $39 for the fuel, $85 for the cost is comparable to this with the 1 person. $40 for the equipment cost, it's $164. Now, Bob did raise the issue about how hard it is. It takes a very long time to close the back of the box. And Bonnie, I'll talk to you about that at the end of the presentation, but it depends who's doing it. So right now, when JR is working at the transfer station, it takes him about 15 to 20 minutes with the skid steer to push the door closed in the box and get the ratchets locked up on it. It has not been an issue. I know it's taken longer than that, but it was with JR and Barry doing it. It's pretty clear to me that this is a better deal in terms of transport costs than doing it this way or this way. the town did look at doing tandem costs using Casella waste. I don't know what year it is, but it's in the bigger spreadsheet. And the cost that we got back at that time, it was $250 a pull to do a single box. And if you compare that with these numbers here, by the way, and it was $500 to do 2 boxes. But what's the point? The theory is that a tandem pull ought to be a little less expensive than a single, 2 singles. So I hit them on that, and they dropped the price down to $450 or $475. Still didn't make any sense. So at that point, we went to live floor. We weren't doing recycling at that point. The markets were good on recycling. We were sending it down to Bill Ricca first, and then to Casella after that. So we weren't using the system at all for recycling. This economics really hasn't changed. Any questions on that before I go to the recycling, to the trash? Okay. Recyclables. So we switched when the markets collapsed. And correct me if I'm wrong, Bonnie, I think you're still able to talk and all that. I think it was the end of 17, beginning of 18. Do you remember when the markets were cratered?
Yeah, it was, 2008 and then again in 2017 and 18. Yep.
Okay, so when the markets cratered, we had a proposal from Casella, which the processing fee was $125,000, $125 a ton back then. And then you had the transport on top of it. And that was just unacceptable. And the markets hadn't really fallen yet. That was before the major fall. At that point, we looked and said, okay, we already got a live floor system. Let's go to a live floor system down here. So this is what we were doing with Casella. 2.33 tons per load. That's per roll-off box. 89 trips a year going to White River Junction. If we did it, that's what the cost would be. It was 136. We were paying at that point, I think somewhere around 250 a pull to bring it to White River Junction. So we stopped doing that. We went over and did a live floor. At the time, the only trailer we could find, I thought it was 100-yard, but it wasn't. It was a 75-yard. I call it a Ram trailer, but it's an injection system that Bonnie's talking about. It's the same thing that she had down there. I did both of these systems based on Tim Lewis's recommendation. So at one point, we were negotiating with Tim Lewis, and I couldn't get him to do a cheaper price. He was charging us in 2011, he was charging us $650 a pull to take the trash to the Lebanon landfill. Not exactly reasonable. I tried to get him to do a tandem deal, and he wouldn't do it. At least Casella offered me almost dollar for dollar, twice the price, but I didn't get it from Tim. And Tim at that point said, well, why don't you do what Campton Thornton does? And I said, I don't know what Campton Thornton does. Which is ironic because I used to run the association, and I knew the operator all right, but I didn't know what he was doing on this issue. So he said, well, he took the ram that he was using for the 40-yard boxes, put the ram up 4 feet higher, put a live floor on it, and he's transporting, I think he was transporting to Bethlehem. So I said, well, I don't think you can do it. And he says, well, he's doing it, go check. So I did. I went over with one of you. Yeah. And we looked at his records, and he was in fact doing between 18 and 22 tons a load going out of Campton Thornton and going to Bethlehem. Same type of compactors we have currently. So I said, well, I'm impressed. So based on that, this is the decision we made on trash. So we took the same decision, went down and looked here on recycling. So we have a trailer that is too small for the job. Dan is absolutely correct when he says that he pointed that out to me. He did. I thought I was still operating with a 100-yard trailer. And it's not. And it's not even a 75-yard trailer because something like 8 yards of it, no, not that much, 4 times. 3 times 8. 128 cubic feet of this thing is occupied with a ramp. So if you look at it, it comes in like at a 71-yard trailer or something like that. So this number is what we got last year going out of the transfer station in a 75-yard trailer, 7.16 tons. You want the backup on it? I got all the sheets with the actual deliveries.
Me too.
And well, actually, you've got them as well, Bob. Yeah. So it was 29 pulls. That's what we based this analysis on, was what we actually did last year. I will say that we get as much as 10 tons in a box, depending on whether they make the effort to try to do it. The way JR does it, and you can talk to him when he gets here, the way JR does it is, he takes it every Monday, period. So if it's 2/3 full, it takes a Monday. If it's,
Every 2 weeks.
well, whatever, yeah, every 2 weeks, I'm sorry, but he takes it on that day. And why? Because he's not doing anything else on that day, so it's easy to do the run and go to Southport. We have some that are as low as 5 tons in the box, some as high as 9 tons in the box. But that's based on the fact that he just takes it on a regular basis. And that's the ton, that's the weight. So we calculated out the same 3 items we talked about: fuel, labor cost, and labor is $18.81 an hour, and the truck in the box, $40 for the truck in the box. And by the way, we have never bought any new equipment. The most expensive expensive live floor truck we bought was $25,000. We have a purchase order out for a truck from Meredith. They're still waiting for the delivery of their new truck. Their old truck is they're selling to us for 20. So if you do the math down at the bottom of the sheet, you'll see that it generates it. There's enough money in the system to take care of it. Trailer, I'm sorry. And the truck was a piece of shit that we bought for something like $15,000. Put in Henley's motor.
No,
Huh?
7,500.
we got a used mower from down somewhere else.
Oh, I thought we took the one.
Camaradas.
No,
that went into one of the freight liners.
Oh,
Not a dump truck.
okay. So in any event, we don't have a fortune in the truck to put them out. It does need repairs. On the other hand, when I was in trucking over in Vermont, it was not unusual to put them over a million miles in a truck or 2 million miles in a truck. You just had to take care of it. So this is the numbers here for fuel, labor, truck and box. Total trip cost is $346. We anticipate that it'll be the same over here and the one next to it, 105 yards. Will be about $346. The difference is you get at least 10.28 tons. That calculation is derived purely on an algebraic expression of it. If you get 7.16 tons and 75 yard, this is what you get at 105 yard. So we should be able to do better than that. In fact, they have been doing better in other places than that. But it's not unreasonable. I checked this number, by the way, against the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency for compacted recyclables, and this is the number that calculates to on their records as well. This one is under their number for their records.
Mhm.
So we got roll-off, single roll-off going to White River, live floor 75 yards, which is what we currently have, live floor 105 yards, which is what we're getting out of Meredith. And then I looked at tandem for White River and tandem for Southport. So I assumed 2 boxes at 2.33 tons in the box. Same type of thing. How many trips? 44. Looked at the cost for fuel, labor, truck and box, and those are the numbers. So it's 407 to use the tandem, a load, 212 to go to White River. That's good news.
So, can I ask a question?
Sure.
What do you run into boxes?
40 yards.
Let's go 40 and 50.
There are problems with 50s. I used to operate 50s exclusively over in Rutland, and there are significant over-the-road problems with 50-yard boxes.
On the truck.
Yeah.
Are they too high?
That's part of the issue. You get a lot of problems with DOT if you put a 50-yard box in. And I used them to get rid of the compactor. So I put a 50-yard box on the transfer stations and I used a backhoe to squish it into the 50-yard box and then haul the 50-yard box. And there's problems doing it. I did it. I used them for 11 years. So I understand how a 50-yard looks. And by the way, Casella had no 50-yarders. All the 50-yarders were owned by Roll.
So you can't buy a 50-yard and a lot 45.
I didn't look at 45s, but I'm not sure it's gonna make a significant difference. You know, I can make another one up, but I don't think it's gonna make a hell of a lot of
It's gonna
difference.
make the figures up.
You say that, Bob, but I don't agree with that.
Well, let me ask you this, it's gonna take you the same time to take a roll off 11 and then dump it as to take the live forward 11 and get it out, dump it out. It's gonna take you the same amount of time.
Yeah, pretty much.
How do you figure that? It takes you twice as long to unload a live floor.
Yep. it
Plus
does.
you're running the engine at a higher.
And how long is that actual period of time?
Huh?
How long is that actual period of time?
That's probably taking you a half hour compared to 5 minutes to dump roll
Okay, so you got a half hour, and how long is the drive time?
off. The drive time the same, about the same time.
Is how long?
It's probably 20 minutes, half an hour to go from here to there.
Okay, so up to an hour, right? And then another half hour to come back, which is an hour and a half. And then how long to load the live fluid?
How long to load it?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I'll answer the question. It doesn't take any time because you're already loading it on a day-by-day basis. How long does it take to load the roll-off truck that had, you gotta move the roll-off truck out and put it on the truck. Not the roll-off truck. You gotta move the roll-off box out and put it on the truck. How long does it take to do that?
Why do you have to move the roll-off box up, put it on the truck?
Well, how
If
is
you
it
had it, if
gonna,
you had it sitting right there, you put it on the truck and take it.
it still takes some time to back it up, drop the
What, 5 minutes to pull it onto a truck?
Okay, so it's equal on that. So the long and the short of it is that it really doesn't take significantly much longer time. If it goes from a half hour to an hour, I've got 4 hours built in for that delivery. So let's count them. An hour at the landfill, half hour over, half
You're not gonna
hour.
be an hour with a roll-off truck.
Okay.
You take one box over there.
I'm
and
all
dump it.
set. I'm gonna make the presentation. And you and I can argue anytime you want, other than right this.
No, I don't wanna argue with you, I wanna have a discussion. Not an argument.
That's-
I think that's important, Bob, the
What?
discussion. I agree with you. You
I don't
know,
wanna have a.
I mean,
don't wanna
and
have an
it's a
argument.
public.
That's all you wanna do is argue.
Well, yeah.
You talking just one box?
Well, 11 in one box.
What would you like? We're gonna be put in for labor. Fuel doesn't change, truck and box don't change. What would you like for labor costs? $20 an hour. Oh, I can't do it. It's not a spreadsheet. So a half hour, half hour, half hour. So an hour and a half. Is that okay?
Sure, presentation, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm willing to look at it. I'm willing to change the number. All right, so I'm going to move it off of this cost, other than say, when I was done with the calculation, again, I did it for tandems. Going over to South Portland, then I did a tandem going to White River. I did it for a live floor with the 100-yard, and I did it with the 75 yards. 12,000 for the single roll-off box, 10,000 for the short live floor, 7,000 for the full-size live floor, 18,000 tandem boxes going to South Portland, and 9,000 for tandem boxes going to Casella. But we're not done. So you can see that that's still the best number. Now, I could change this number over here. I'd be happy to change it. Is it going to change it by $3,000 to $3,500? I don't think so, but let's assume hypothetically it does. Why? Because here's the next piece. It isn't just about the haul charge, it's about where it's going. About where it's going. So Casella historically has had a number of charges that are related to recycling. It isn't just the full charge, it isn't just the processing fee. There were charges for disposal or other charges that were tacked on to the fees that Casella was charging. All I'm gonna look at and all I looked at in this analysis is how much did Casella charge last year? Real simple.
Well,
So I got-
I don't have a problem with where you're taking.
Well, let me
the
finish
recyclables.
it. I for the public too.
No, I'm just saying, I don't have a problem where you're taking the recyclables. I think that's probably the best deal we're getting.
You're gonna take a single load to South Portland?
No, I can't until Portland.
Okay, so let's keep going. This is a live floor, short live floor, long live floor. This is the savings that this is really low on, there's a much higher number. But this is the lowest number in terms of what we've got for increased revenue that was paid into us in July, and I'm gonna show you that on Bonnie's statements that we got from her. So this comes off of the cost. It gets it down to $63.99. All these numbers across here assume $105 or $109 a ton. Because that's what it was in July when we made the last decision. There was one that was 105 and one that was 109. Close, I don't remember the exact numbers. So what I did was I took the savings. The savings is a result of the contract we have, which passes the savings from increased revenue for the sale of commodities back to us. And I did it for this box, the 75-yard live floor trailer, for the 105 live floor trailer. And that drops the cost down more. This is still 12,000 over here. This one drops down to 6,300. That's with the existing light weights of 7.16 tons. And it drops it down to 3,300 with a 100-yard trailer. Go over here to Tandem in South Portland. 14,515 versus 13,000. Going to White River with a Tandem 9,000 versus 3,300. It's not even the same neighborhood. The only way you get this savings here is if you're going to South Portland. So long and short of it, for trash and recycling, the best cost is this one right here, which is use a large live source for trash and for recycling. The total cost overall is $13,156.
Can you slide over, Mike,
Which way?
to the left, so we can see the right-hand column, yeah.
So the other numbers are 27,000, 22,000. 16,000 of the 75-yard trailer, and 28,000. So for the sake of argument, we're going to take out $40 times 90, so that's $3,600. We just chopped $3,600 out of the drive time because it's so simple to do the roll off. So there's what it would be. It'd be roughly $25,000. As I said, I don't think it makes any difference whether what you do on the roll. The assigned expense for the truck and for the box is these numbers down below. Another number, but yeah, right there. Okay, so this generates roughly $2,500 a year, $3,500, $3,200. That's an allocation that's built into the budgeting process that is available for the truck replacement, plus $4,000. So we currently are putting $4,000 in for equipment now. So that's about 7,000 on a 10-year basis. It's 70,000 on a 6-year basis. It's $42,000, and that should be enough to cover the replacement costs, assuming we don't buy brand new equipment. And frankly, I don't know. I think brand new equipment is overkill when you're driving 2 loads. Well, you're not. When you're driving 1 or 2 loads a week of trash and 1 load every 2 weeks of recycling. I mean, you really want to pay $100,000 for any type of truck, brand new, to do it? And I think the answer is no. So that's my presentation, and I think it's. I'm happy if I don't have the spreadsheet, so I can't go in and massage the numbers. But I just gave you a rough guesstimate by saying, okay, I'll take half the labor cost away. It should be right in line with what you just said. It still doesn't work.
They're not gonna use much fuel. either.
You're not, but I got a hell of a lot more fuel over here, over on any of the live floors. And I do have more fuel. This is based on 3 miles per gallon. If you don't like it, that's fine, then I'll change them all, but that's based on 3 miles per gallon. It's based on $3, which is now too low on the diesel price. But in any event, Bonnie, any other questions other than, yeah, go ahead.
I just got a quick question and
Yeah.
so if you look at the roll off for trash, and you look at the roll off cost for White River.
Yeah.
Or the live floor for trash and live floor recycling, why is the tons per load so much lower for recycled product than it is for that we're fitting on than for just trash?
The size of the box and also compaction.
Why?
Cardboard.
We have more compaction actually going on in the live floor because we moved the floor to also. Is that? I think
No,
that's-
what I'm saying is like, if you compare, live floor, or let's just look at the roll off cost,
Yeah.
tons per load for trash,
Yeah.
you're getting 9.75 tons per load.
Yeah.
Okay. You're getting a quarter of that in recyclables per load.
Okay, I
Why is
thought it was like-
recyclables so much lower per ton?
It's a lighter material.
You're talking plastics, cardboard, it's a lot lighter.
Just seems like it's,
Yeah,
if it's later, you should be able to compact it more.
right. And I'm not sure they're, I'm catching your question, Stephen, but I'm not sure they are because their answer doesn't in line with it. I think anyway.
Glass
Glass is heavy when it's
Right.
compacted down, so.
Do you think that we can get higher than that number, Bonnie, on compaction of recycling?
I had used for a 40 cubic yard, I had used between 3 and 4 tons. We're talking open tops here, right?
No,
For the roll-offs.
for the roll-off, it was open tops, but you could assume we'd have to buy roll-offs that are closed. But assume closed. even. How much-
Okay. Because an open top roll-off, you could literally take your piece of equipment and push it down a bit and get some of that fluff out of the cardboard and the paper. But if you've got a closed container, that's going to be even lighter because you don't have that opportunity. I have some communities that have paper in a closed container and they go in and they literally stomp on it to get as much weight in there. But yet this is fluffy, basically fluffy material between the paper and the cardboard and your plastics, unless people are trained to stomp on everything before they get it to you.
So when I first got here, that's what we were doing. We had a 40-yard box and it was going to Bill Ricker. And we had a guy working full-time in the box, breaking down every box, stomping it all down. And the numbers I'm quoting was basically a half a ton for the containers, even with the glass in it, never got above a half a ton or 3/4 of a ton. And I got roughly 3 tons maximum on stomping down the paper in the 40-yard box. And that came from our numbers back from Bill Ricker when it's going to, what's this?
I did want to make a comment. If you were going to go with 50 yarders, you wouldn't be able to haul those tandem, from what I understand. 40s, no problem. 50s,
I
it
think
wouldn't be a tandem option for you.
you can haul 50, but it does cause problems with DOT.
A couple comments about going into White River Junction. If anybody's been up there, it's a very small facility. What they do with this material is you would dump it on the tipping floor and they would just push that into a 100-yard trailer and send it up to Rutland for processing. So basically White River is just a first stop for that material. They do not, at this point, do not have a scale on site. So as an operator, I wanted to know what was in there. I did not like using average weights. I wanted to know what was in my container. So you'd have to factor in stopping somewhere to, at a scale, to weigh, go empty, go back to the scale and weigh full and weigh empty. So that's something just to consider going into White River Junction.
How popular was the White River Junction contracts back at the time? Back in-
We now have, we're working with 5 contracts with White River Junction one for single stream, one for dual stream, which is your commingled in one and your containers in one and your fibers in the other. And 2, I have 3 Vermont towns I'm working with under a contract with Casella. And then we have a lot of spot market going into there. So we've got all the combinations going into White River Junction.
You think we would be better served going away from this system and going to?
I do, because I've always used Canaan as an example of a town that was really forward thinking in densifying material. The more you can densify, I don't foresee, if you stay with single stream, obviously you're not going to have to bale material to make full tractor trailer loads. But your next option is to densify whenever you can the material that you have. And the whole idea of cutting down on those hauls. The number of hauls less are showing right here that that's a lot cheaper than making all of these, 89 hauls. Wouldn't make any sense to go from Canaan to EcoMaine with 4 or 5 tons. That, to me, that doesn't, as an environmentalist, that doesn't feel right. That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But again, I've always used you guys as an example as to how things can be done a little bit differently with single stream. And we have a lot of communities that are using the 42 cubic yard compactors for their single stream, but they're smaller towns than you are.
Just to clarify, because I was making, the question I was asking is going to say, would it make more sense to go to White River? And you said it does, but I never got the words White River up. So what you're saying is it makes more sense to densify and bring it over to South Fork.
Correct. And I don't know who would be hauling if you were going to take the roll-offs. The town would be hauling?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so that keeps, again, another example I've used, Canaan and Grantham, have your own truck, do your own scheduling. Keeping that in the town is incredibly important. I give you a lot of credit for that, where you don't have to depend on another company to come and pull when they can. So that's very forward thinking, doing your own maintenance. But yeah, if there's one word that I really have to stress, it's densification. It's densifying, just like you do with your MSW, with your waste. Densify it, get it in as much as you can put into that container. And you're also the one thing about, I know we haven't really talked about the EcoMaine contract, but one thing about having a fixed contract is you did very well this year. White River Junction's pricing, unless we went into a contract, would be spot pricing, and it would change month to month. And that's some of the pricing that I had shared with Mike as far as the last year went. So it's all market driven, as you know. Your single stream pricing was really good this year because commodity prices were really good this year. We're back down into a place where everything is still good, but it's not as good as it was throughout the summer and into the early fall. So it'll be interesting to see what this year does. I just in looking at this, and I'm glad I was able to listen to the numbers here, because it's showing some really good thought. It's just a question of what is the system that you want in place, not for just now, but for the future, and how long, those pieces of equipment are expensive up front, but their longevity, if they're taken care of, is 20 plus years. And that's from experience, again, and having bought transfer trailers, and that's something to consider as well.
What did you haul on the 75-yard?
What kind of weights did we get?
What material?
Oh, MSW.
And what kind of waste?
Waste. Yeah.
Do you know what your weights were?
Yep. 18.75. No, I don't really remember that. It was 19 years ago. About 18 tons we were getting on there.
Okay, so that's pretty
for
strict
trash.
to get that, well, we don't know, we've never done that. Okay, does anybody have any questions for Bonnie?
I do.
Go ahead.
Bonnie, if we were to separate out the paper and cardboard into a separate container, would that save
Yeah.
us? money?
And you'd be going into, say, an open top container or a closed top container, but it would be loose material. That's what you're talking about.
Much like what Grafton does in Grantham.
Yeah, the prices, right now for delivered, let's use delivered to White River Junction because you're familiar with that route. Going into White River Junction, mixed paper, it can be mixed paper and cardboard put together loose. Again, you're gonna get lower weights if you do that. Is in the $40 a ton revenue range right now. I expect that will go down next month because pricing is dropping. You could separate out cardboard in one container, separate out paper in another, separate out containers in another. There are, again, it's like a cafeteria plan when you start to think about what kind of recyclables. That's not the first thing I would suggest though. And Mike and I have talked about this a little bit, but your heaviest component is glass. And the potential of keeping that glass separate, I call it single stream with a twist, is a very common program that people are offering and asking their residents. It doesn't have to be 100% because you still be able to send that into EcoMaine. But we're starting to see some negotiations with Casella and Waste Management as giving a credit if the glass is pulled out. Exception is EcoMaine. They do not want that glass pulled out. If they're talking single stream, they want the whole thing. Will that change over the course of years? I don't know. But you can kind of see the complexities of it when you start thinking about pulling material out. You can't, under your current contract, you couldn't start pulling material out to sell it. You are in a contract for single stream material, and that material needs to go all up to EcoMaine.
You have to supply that number of tons, basically what they saw last year in the.
Right. Yep. And they have it, they could rattle off what percentage of that is mixed paper, what percentage is plastic, what percentage is glass. And that's what they're looking for from Canaan is their single stream recycling in total going into that facility. Again, Waste Management Casella, they'd love to have that glass taken out because they don't like to process it. So again, just depending on where you're going and how you're getting it there.
And for members of the public, the related issue is, why can't we just go back and do what we used to do? We still have 2 balers in the barn. And the answer for us was, it was a $36,000 plus benefits cost to do that. So that's for 200 tons of recyclables. And that gets to be a trifle expensive. So we have now a person that was running the transfer station who is now taking a total of about 6 hours a week or 8 hours a week and doing the trucking parts. And we're doing that, but it's not costing us $36,000 to do that. And before I got here, the board and the manager of the facility at the time decided that the best way to go was to go to dual stream, which is what we did for, I think, 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. Using Moxton and Billerica and then Casella for the follow-up on it. So we have tried other things, but the baling part is just too expensive manpower wise and then the separation, we would have to go back and re-educate the public again on separation. Our public is not really wildly enthusiastic about any change whatsoever. So, and you and I have talked about the glass. There are arguments that we made on the glass. The biggest problem is where we're going to do it, how we're going to manage it, and is it going to be all or nothing? And do we have to do a more vigorous 2-step sort in order to guarantee the product going out?
Yes, you would. You'd have to do a what they call 2-stage separation, where me as a resident would bring in, put it on a tray, putting it in a small bin, and then staff would go through and make sure there were no contaminants. Yeah, that's part of the glass deal. Yeah.
And
So right now you're letting somebody else deal with that up at EcoMaine.
Any other questions for Bonnie? All right, I got two other people, if you can hang on, Bonnie, it won't take longer. I was gonna have John Boy share with the crowd. There was a period when Durfort, who was one of my successors at Northeast Resource Recovery, came and asked us to set up a entrepreneurial hauling system for another 10 towns. I told them we just had no depth. We didn't have the manpower, didn't have the money to set it up. And while there was a lot of demand for it, I said no. But and since I didn't want to drag Durfort into this discussion, I asked John to share what the conversations were with Andover and Wilmot, some of the other towns. And what did they tell you?
Well, most of them dealt with Casella at that point, Bonnie, and the contracts where it was not a fluid contract, with no set numbers. So they would send their loads and they get the price back when they got the bill. So it changed every time they did it. So sometimes they get a good recycling number and they get money back. But if the thing was off spec in any way, they get charged both as garbage, they get charged for the recycling, and they get charged a different transportation rate. So sometimes their recycling was costing them $1,500 a load. I mean, it was sticker shock back in 17 and 18. There were 3 or 4 towns that literally just got out of the Casella contracts because of it.
So then the other comments I wanted, I'm sorry, go ahead. Bonnie? Bonnie?
Nope, that was somebody else.
The revenue stream is important. And if you went through and looked at every single year from 2010 to today, there were periods when it was great and periods when it sucked. You know, frankly, when I was going to Motzkin, we were doing fine. It was not a negative number. It was a positive number. Of course, he also went bankrupt. So that sort of puts a little bit of a sour note onto it. When we started with Eco Maine, it was only $65 a ton for the processing fee, but the revenue hadn't dropped. And at its high point, it was 109. Well, the high point for Casella for the processing fee, I believe in the last year was something like $145 or $150 a ton. And the good thing about Eco Maine is it is not a for-profit operation. It's a nonprofit government, quasi-government operation. And that made a difference. And the truth is that the revenue stream, looking at the profits of the sales value of the materials, is tracking quite nicely with Casella, except it's about $30 to $40 a ton less favorable to us than it is with South Portland. And I do have a spreadsheet, I didn't bother to bring it, but that is one of the driving factors that go in South Portland. And I expect it's going to be, like right now, we're paying $109 a ton less the revenue stream, which gets down to $70 a ton. So it's almost the same as the disposal rate. The disposal rate is $76 a ton. The net cost of recycling is $72, something like that, a ton over South Point. There's drive time, so the drive is more expensive than it is to go for the trash. But there was a time when that was zero. Okay, so that's what I'm hoping we're going to get back to. My analysis, Bonnie, is if we got a straight line for the next 12 months based on what's going on right now with the revenue streams that I'm seeing out of Casella, that it looks like our processing fee could drop from 72 down to about 8. So I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that within the last 4 months, it's been fairly, last 6 months, it's been pretty damn vigorous in terms of improved revenues. And some of the revenues I've never seen as high since I've been in the industry. So I know that it's quite high. Our contract has a rider on it, so we get the revenue stream as it changes. So if it gets better, we get more money back. That is not tracking with Casella. And I didn't bring it, but I do have a spreadsheet that shows that their number looks low right now, but there's no revenue stream that's going with it. So that's pretty much it on the finances of the thing. I asked JR to come in because one of the statements that has been made is that nobody at the transfer station wants to stay with live flow. JR, I asked you to come and share with us.
what can I do for you?
Yeah, can you tell us what your thoughts are about switching back over to the roll-off system?
Didn't hear you, Mike, I'm sorry.
Can you share with us what your views are, thoughts are about switching back over to the roll-off system?
Yeah, I've been thinking about that. It sucks. You put a trailer on behind one of them roll-offs, and have to go to Maine. You can't do more than 40, 45, or else the trailer's gonna start doing one of these things. And if it freezes on your way over, you're in trouble. You get no way of getting it out. They won't dig it out for you.
So you got, go ahead.
4 big pistons. 2 to lift the hoist and 2 to pull the cans on. And you gotta keep track of the cable. That starts to fray, you gotta replace that immediately. And
Do the live floors freeze up, JR?
so
They don't.
I put antifreeze in it.
Which we're not making available to DES.
Yeah, that's easier, Bonnie.
Yeah,
Muffler ears.
yeah.
Well, that ain't going to Maine, that's going to dump.
Mm.
They didn't freeze up today, this morning.
It is a common practice in the industry, it's frowned on by DES. But everybody I know in the industry is doing it, unless you know something I don't know about it.
It's RV antifreeze.
Yeah, that's it, it's RV interface. All right, so there's some other questions for you, JR, that you raised with me. And were raised. One of the issues is that we ought to get away from going to South Portland and the live floor, because the truck gets stranded between here and South Portland, and somebody's got to go and bail you out. How many times has that happened in the last 9 years?
But somebody had to come get me.
Yeah. Or come over and repair the truck.
Oh, once, just over the border in the Maine, my radiator got bound up, air valve. And then down, last month or so ago, my cat fell off my drive shaft. And I think I'm driving that truck like that. I just pulled over and called for some help.
And so I think you told me there was like 3 times total, once with,
Yeah, once was on the way back from Lebanon, the hand primer popped out. They just swapped the motor.
and one of those was it Tom or Bain? Which one was that?
Maine went, come over Maine, Tom came down to Lebanon. And Bob sent Jason over the truck stop. Get me. And we didn't,
So that was out of the last 9 years.
you know,
That was over the last, since you started, when did you start?
Match, I think last,
No, when did you come to work for us? A long time.
Seems like a lifetime.
yeah,
2014.
long time ago,
2014,
Yeah.
7 years ago.
17, I think.
No, it was before 17. Because when I had a live floor system, you were here.
Yeah.
So I don't know, we have to go back on it. So it's somewhere between 7 and 9 years, 3 times. Are you happy with the level of maintenance you got on the equipment now? No. Okay, so again, what I want to point out to Dan and to the rest of the members of the public, that in the transfer station budget, we've had $5,000 in a separate line for repairs of the equipment for the last 4 years. So part of the problem with that is, so the idea is, if we can't get it done in the highway garage, we'll take it to Lucky's or somebody else. Then we'll do the repairs that needs to be done. I think that for safety purposes, and for all the complaints you've had, we need to get the repairs done. It's a mistake to think that the only trucks in the town of Canaan that need repairs are trash trucks or trailers. Are the only things that need repairs. All of our equipment needs repairs. If there's if it's not getting done, I'm not adverse to having it done by an outside company. to do the work. That's why I've had over these years, 5,000 a year, and I just jacked it up in this year's budget, I think to $7,000 or $8,000 to provide that service. So I agree that there needs to be better maintenance, and if the way to assure that is to contract it out, then that's what we ought to do. So three issues total that I wanted to raise. The first issue was on the repairs. I think we need to spend the money. We'll do it as a separate line, a separate vendor doing the work. On the issue of breakdowns, yeah, we've had 3 breakdowns and take your pick, 7 to probably isn't nice, probably 7 or 8. So that's an issue. And on the other hand, we have other people doing driving for similar reasons on other equipment in order to go pick up parts or whatever. That also takes time to go out and do that work. So that is an issue. The most important issue for me is we don't have any backup for JR. So it takes a CDLA. We rephrase it. Apologies. So the only backup we have for JR is Bob. And Bob is uncomfortable because he's also the mechanic and the highway superintendent, and he's got all the jobs. And having him go to South Portland is not something he ought to be doing. So I'm not trying to take away from what you've done, Bob. I really appreciate it because that's all we have. We do have an open position which we need to fill this year. It's a position that's half-time for John and half-time for the transfer station. And I've told the board, and I'll say it publicly, what we need to do is make sure that person has a CDLA in order to do it. He has to drive pumper truck for water and sewer, and drive the truck for the trash. So that would give us 2 bodies which have a CDLA, neither of which are in the highway department, so it doesn't take away manpower from the highway department. And it's already within the budget, we just don't have a person in it. And I think Dan was correct in saying we need to do better advertising and outreach, and we need to spend more money. I agree with that too. So we need to get that position filled, and it is a major objective over the next 3 months to get that position filled. It's already fully funded. It was funded last year. But Hugh was in the job and went to work with Bob. So Bonnie, anything you can add to anything else? I mean, I'm pretty much done in terms of my spiel.
I just want to say hello to JR. We don't see each other very much now that we're not having in-person meetings. As far as the job opening, a whole lot of options. We have a listserv through NRRA. There's the Public Works listserv, and through our website. So let's talk about that offline, Mike. We just saw an advertisement come from Thornton is looking for a full-time operator, and that's all of those avenues they use. So we can talk about that. No, I think delving into this, I rarely do get to see the work that towns do to really make good long-term decisions. So thank you for sharing that with me. Again, from a practical standpoint, I'm available if you've got any follow-up questions. Just keep up your good work.
And just to make it very clear, Bonnie is an expert, doesn't need any prompts from me. She knew this industry before I knew this industry. So thank you very much. And I have no doubt that you told people exactly what your real thoughts are. You would not be reluctant to tell me I'm an asshole. So, maybe not in exactly those ways.
We appreciate your time, Bonnie. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very, very welcome.
So that's the other side of the story first. Yeah, that's all I wanted to do was that presentation.
Bob, do you have anything to add to it? Anybody else have any questions?
I actually do have a question. Did I misunderstand you? Did you say there was only $5,000 set aside for maintenance on the truck? The trash truck?
Yeah. It could be anything it needs to be. The
Didn't we
reason
raise it?
was-
You realize I don't even cover a brake job on a truck?
Yeah, I do, but the total town budget,
I was just thinking, maybe I was hoping it misunderstood.
no, but theoretically, at least, all of the maintenance is supposed to be done by the mechanic.
Are you talking about outside service?
I'm talking about outside service.
Okay. all right.
5,000
That makes more sense.
outsourced.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
If they can't do it, it goes to
I see.
Lucky's
I see. where
or
you're
somebody
going.
else.
Yeah,
JR, I didn't ask this question, but it isn't just your feelings. Danny shares in your feelings about leaving the system the way it is? Or do you know?
My feelings on what?
You told the group here that you don't like the idea of going back to the roll-offs.
No,
Does Danny have a different feeling about that?
no,
Okay.
Can I just ask a question, financials taken out of it, Bob, why, I mean, I would like to know why you would strongly go back to roll-offs. I mean,
Well.
without the
anybody-
financials
Anybody
involved.
be able to drive the truck. So it wouldn't matter whether you got an A or not. At least take one box and get it emptied if that was a problem. We have a lot more CDL B drivers than we do A. It would becoming very hard to come by. To me, I feel there's a lot less maintenance to a roll-off truck than there is to a light.
You agree with it?
no.
Just asking for budget.
I know, I just want to pay.
I mean, I would rather work on a roll-off truck than I would to be that engine on track trailer. I'm not gonna crawl up underneath that thing, otherwise it would be done here in house. I would have done the brake job on the road tractor last winter, but it had to be done, and I couldn't leave it in the garage and have it apart. So you have to get all the highway trucks back in again, I don't have the room to do it and leave it apart. So that's why that got sent out. The reason the life floor trailer is gonna get taken out and worked on outsourced, because I refuse to work. It's so nasty. And I just don't care, catch anything from it.
So JR, did you tell me that you had requested repeatedly to get the pressure washer over to clean it?
I get it. When it's available. I get it from, I got it twice last year.
You tell me you were gonna bring your own?
Line 4 for, what, about 5 hours total.
Didn't you tell me you were gonna bring your own pressure washer down?
Well, if I had a washcloth, I got my own power washer, yeah.
That's part of the problem. I mean, it stinks. It's a trash. It really needs to be cleaned, both from that point of view and also from wear on the equipment point of view. So you leave it, dumped up, it causes problems.
I think there's one other thing, I don't know if it's, will factor either way, and quite frankly, this evening, I'm not even going there, I'm just stating an obvious fact that we do have to look for, Stephen, come February. February 7th, the rules of how you require a CDL federally change. So like I say, I'm not saying whether it'll be work, but it's just something that we do need to keep in mind. So starting February 7th, as it stands right now, if you want to get a CDL, whether it's a B, an A, a combination, whatever it is, that endorsement, you can go, you sign up, you take your written test, you get a permit, and I could take, say, Bob or anyone who has that endorsement and drive just like I was getting my regular license. But starting February 7th, and then I go to a multiple testing facilities, I sign up for an appointment when they have one, and it's like Lebanon, Twin Mountain, Concord. But starting February 7th, all that changes. And so it costs me like $120 or so to take the written test, $20 to take the driven. But starting in February, it's $7,000, and it's a federal program that you have to go to their designated location. And you can only, so right now, I could put Bob in the passenger seat and practice my driving skills. But at that point, you can't. You have to go on a scheduled time with their instructor to take your driving skills and all of it. So I'm not saying it's not going to be doable, and we're going to have to pay for someone to get their license when they come to work here, don't get me wrong. But it is going to be a game changer, and it might make it more feasible in the short term to be able to work with people who are already licensed and work here, and most of the staff that we have here are Class B.
But you bring up a good point. When we're looking for a truck driver, whether it be highway or wherever it is,
Hmm.
we're gonna have to look at increasing
Oh, yeah.
the pay. If
base-
they've got a CDL, it's gonna cost $7,000 for us to get them a CDL if they don't have it. So, somebody with a CDL is worth
Right,
$5,000 to $7,000 worth more,
And
and we
I-
don't have to pay it.
you're
Well,
right,
that's
Dave.
a $7,000 one-time fee. That's not a $7,000
No, yeah,
annual fee.
yeah.
that you-
But I
Okay,
mean, if you're
works.
choosing person A, person B's got a CDL already.
Hmm.
We don't have to fund, and it's just like a police officer.
Definitely something. we
If we've
should
got, if we've got a police officer that's already certified, we don't have to send them to a 15-week school.
do. So maybe when we advertise, that's something that we're looking a little
Yeah.
more for, but as that goes, right? So these are all these things, and this is really what I was trying to do a couple weeks ago. With all these things, you gotta put a thought process into place. If we have to increase the amount of pay that we're gonna hire a new person on, because hopefully they have a CDL, then we're gonna be paying them more than the guys that have been working here for 10 years. So that's gonna be a spiral, right? So there's a lot of little aspects to this whole thing that I really just gonna have to be paid attention to is all. I'm not saying people haven't been. I'm saying that this is what is coming. There's some changes that are being made to the system in a lot of different aspects.
Yeah, I mean,
That
it changes all the
position
time, so.
in the
No,
budget-
they're right. That's right.
The position in the budget is already high paid. We already established it because it isn't just for the transfer station.
Hmm.
It's also for water and sewer
Right.
with 5 different licenses, and we're gonna have to pay for the training on that. So the job description is somewhere around 35 to 40,000 bucks. So how much, what's your base? Yeah, well, yours is higher. But I mean,
Well, I've been
base
here
pay is-
25 years,
Yeah, I don't count. I don't.
yeah.
The starting pay is these days is about 19 bucks now, so it'd be $38,000.
Which
So-
is cookies for a CDL driver,
What's that?
which is crumbs for a CDL.
It is unless you
driver,
got somebody that's
unfortunately.
doing over the road and doesn't want to be.
No, I drove for dual transport for 8 years. I hauled 100 live floors. The last year when I got done with them and I was home every night, I was between 72 and 75.
But for our horse, we got. you.
I'm just saying for a CDL driver, that's crumbs.
And I think, we're gonna see that increase quite a bit after February. I know personally, my rates are gonna go up after February. It's just supply and demand. So if you need a CDL driver, you're gonna pay me more.
Now, the other picture
You
is,
see, yeah.
if you get
So why
someone,
don't you drive?
if you hire someone,
Would you authorize me to, Steve?
you pay them you pay that $7,000 for them to get that license and they don't stay.
I think there would
You
have to be
just-
some sort of a.
Is it gonna be
Yeah,
some
it's-
kind of a
it's-
contract?
Sort of like that with the police department, Pat,
And ambulance.
and the ambulance is, they agree, if we train you, we send you out to school.
Yeah.
You have to agree to stay here with the town for a period of time for us to get our money back.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. I mean, that's common sense stuff.
'Cause
And
that's-
if they sign a contract, they say the 3 years. They have to stay here. They sign a contract, they leave in 1 year. Well, guess what? There's 2 years that you still owe for. So we're gonna get that money.
Okay.
So,
'Cause that could
You
be
know, there
real-
is a contract. We do have it with the
Okay.
EMS and we have it with the police department.
which does help, and hopefully
Yeah.
that would encourage people to stay. The end of that result is it would require litigation and a bunch of yuck, so hopefully the other person wouldn't be interested in that either, right? But
Right.
that's really the only safeguard, because we spoke about this, some months ago, trying to come up with that program. And I don't know, and if anybody else has a better safeguard for the town, please let us know, But that's what we come up with, was a contract.
And years ago, we didn't have one. And
Hmm.
basically Canaan was a training facility and then they go.
Yeah.
Um,
That's my understanding, right?
But yeah,
Yeah.
but we did compare our prices that we are paying wages. With, for example, the police department, I believe it was. And we're not the low end by
We're
any
at the top
means.
end.
What's that?
We're at the top end.
We're creeping. we're not,
For the first 5-year officers, we're at the
5-year
very top, you
officer,
know, we're
yeah.
like number 2 in the state.
so it's not that Canaan is squeaky. Because we aren't, we understand you're going to have to pay money to get somebody that's trained.
You're right, Steve, on being the top too, other than the fact that in this area, well, Hanover and Lebanon.
And you can't chase dollars. I mean, the town can't afford to give people all the money they want. We just can't afford it. We're offering good benefits. We offer a small town environment where we still wave to one another, we still talk to one another. Whereas in the city, all you are is just a police officer with a uniform in a cruiser. So I think the personal part of it, at least in my opinion, having been brought up in the town, I'd much rather walk down the street and have somebody go on the other side and wave at you than live in a big city. We
Well,
do
we're-
wave, Steve.
We're dishing
Sometimes
out
how you
such
wave.
good benefits. How come, do we have any applicants for the highway department? Do we have anyone signing up?
Well, we had you that worked for the water and sewer department and switched over to Bob's department. We haven't pushed the water sewer recycling person at all since last summer, and a couple of reasons. One is to save us some money. But we will. We've got that and the mechanic, and we did switch back in October. We switched how we advertise. Costing us more money. It's costing us about $2,000 to advertise on the social media, not Facebook, but the Indeed and ZipRecruiter and those groups to advertise for jobs.
You still have to hire another one more. I would.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Eddie's
so
not gonna
you and
last
I need
forever.
to chat with about, I don't know if we do, it's in there, whatever you have is in the budget.
Yeah, Eddie's not gonna last forever.
I know. But we gotta go through the list.
I don't want to hurt your
don't wanna
feelings,
do
but
it
you and
tonight.
I aren't either.
I know that.
I'd like to think so, but
Yeah, helpless as all.
Hey, probably,
You
well,
might,
live me. So in any event,
you know.
we are gonna advertise differently. We did advertise differently in the police department. It's just that we only had like 3 weeks to get the position filled. So starting this month, we're gonna be advertising with broader appeal. We will also be doing something about the pay in order to make sure we get people that are qualified to do the job. So anyway, I just wanted to get a public presentation. I don't know how many people we have tonight, but so at least everybody gets to hear the other side of the story about trash. And that's it.
any other input?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
Now, if you went with a roll-off truck, couldn't you do better on your recycles, on your metal, your aluminum? I know you could do 100% better on your #1 steel.
Yeah, but we did that. We looked at sending it over to Bridgewater.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's close by.
Because
That's where I take my
Bob
stuff.
suggested it, except they did the numbers. So you're gonna have to haul the tonnage over there. You gotta have your time and everything else added on to it. And the differential, I haven't looked at it in 5 years, okay? It was before the prices dropped, okay? So when the prices were still high and bringing it over there, it didn't make any sense to do it. Unless you really want to spend a lot of time using highway crew to do it, understanding you're not going to be doing highway work to do it. Now, there are things we can do to improve what we get now for scrap metal. And scrap metal is a whole different commodity than like aluminum and tin and all the rest. We can get a lot of money for plastics and for aluminum right now if we bet. The question is, can we get enough to offset the $36,000 cost? The answer is no. We don't have that tonnage. We got a total of 200 tons. So divide 36,000 by 200 plus benefits. See what it gets you. That's how much you're gonna have to get. Aluminum is a high value commodity. Paper is a high value commodity compared to what it was. Plastic is out of this world. We used to run a plastics manufacturing plant. We got grades of plastic in the high density in the polypropylene and in the PET that are more than what virgin resin was costing me back 10 years ago. So the values of the recycled commodities for plastic have gone through the roof. But it's lightweight. We just don't get that much plastic. And
No.
it takes a lot of labor to bale it.
we have to have that separated
We do.
when people come in, so that means somebody has to say, that's good plastic, that doesn't go. So you have to have another person doing that besides,
Well, you gotta have this two-step sort. We always had somebody manning those 40-yard boxes to check the material going in and rejecting it going into the 40-yard boxes.
Mhm.
And when we had those boxes, we had 4 of them, one guy. And we had contamination issues when I was going down to Moxton, down on Bill Rickon. In JR, we still have strong standards from Eco Maine in terms of what their expectations are for the recycling now.
Yeah.
And we are testing out as one of the best providers of material right now because of the two-step sorts. And it's a tough job because you're pretty much working your ass off all the time when the public's there. They're trying to get it in the hole and get it out of there as quick as they possibly can, and somebody's got to check the loads. We have less than 1% contamination, which makes us the cream of the crop. But you gotta look at contamination issues. So we would have to look at contamination issues and we would have to bail it. And we'd have to have storage areas for the materials. We gotta use a skid steer or something like it to move the materials around from bunker to bunker to get it in there to get it bailed. So it's not, and you, those of you that are around here, 15 years ago, you know what it was like because you did it. You used to bail it. And I didn't make the decision. It was the board's decision and the manager's decision at the time. And it was the right decision to put bailing because it just isn't worth it with the value that's coming in. This past year, we got something like $10,000 in revenue from recycling, not counting Ergo Maine. Not counting on scrap metal. It's pretty good money.
But I do notice if you requested people to recycle, there's a lot of cardboard that's going in the trash. It could be recycled.
All the
Lots.
time.
We brought the Boy Scouts in one year to encourage people to do that. They lined the whole road. They talked to people as they were getting out of their cars, telling them, you can recycle. We had a 2-day disaster because we had people cursing, using obscenities and telling the Boy Scouts to stuff it and all sorts of wonderful things. That's what happened. In this town, you can't tell anybody what to, you can ask them nicely to do it. We ran an advertising campaign for 2 years saying, if you recycle, you save this much money. If you put it in the trash, you don't. If you save the money, it goes to the bottom line on taxes and you don't pay as much money. And the truth of the matter is the cost went down before they went up on trash and the transfer station. The only reason they went up is because the tipping fees went up on trash and because the values dropped on the commodities. But otherwise, the town has done a pretty good job with the compromise. We can't tell people what to do,
So everybody in town here shouldn't be complaining about their taxes.
but they.
They shouldn't have.
That's true on highway too. You do your own work. One of the biggest battles in this town was to get an excavator and get a hammer on the excavator. For somebody who works in slate quarries for 15 or 20 years, I'm pretty familiar with what an excavator can do with a hammer. Okay? It was no offense, but it was a lead pipe decision in my case. Do it. And maybe don't buy a new piece, but get a good piece of equipment that can do it. That was a battle. It took what, 10 years, 8 years, a lot of years to pull that off. That's a strategic decision you make because it's the best thing to do. It means rather than hiring an excavator for a week just because you got a job that needs the excavator and the hammer to do it. Whenever you get any project during that 365 days where you got to use a hammer and excavator, you got it in the fleet. If you don't pay $150,000 for it, you buy it used and you get a reasonable price on it, it's a hell of a good investment. And if the hammer works right, and we had a rebuild that failed, but if the hammer works right, the hammer earns its keep quite well. That's an example of investing in something that will have dividends. So what does the public do? They look at the new excavator and then they say, oh, the town's spending money like a drunken sailor. Said the same thing about the bulldozer. You paid how much for it? $500? Yeah, $500 for the bulldozer.
Scrap steel.
And then we put another grand into it or something like that. So we had $1,500 in a bulldozer. So what was the payback on that? 1 year, 6 months? It's ridiculous. It makes sense to do it. The vision for the taxpayers were blowing money like drunken sailors. We aren't deserving of the money. That's not the reality. So the only thing we can do is use programs like this to continue to tell people, and that's a valuable thing. That's, what you want to have, which is a dialogue with the voters, is a valuable thing. They need to understand that we're not doing it just because we want a new shiny toy with the tree. And that's true of every department. Doesn't make any difference what it is.
No, they want it in their own garage.
That's true.
Everybody wants to use it.
So anyway, I got nothing else.
Anybody else? We're on to other business. Anybody have any other business?
I'm gonna report on McGrath in open session.
Okay,
I think Buckwell was on.
Jillian? I believe I saw her, yes.
Jillian, are you still on? So we had a situation occur back in April, May, July, June, somewhere in that time frame, where Buckwell's came in for a building permit to change McGrath's garage into a residence. Okay. At the time that they came in, we signed off on it saying it wasn't in a floodplain. The reason we signed off on it in 1984, before there was a floodplain ordinance in the town of Canaan, McGrath actually got a permit from the state to put in 2,500 cubic yards of fill where that building is, which elevated it by 5 feet, which theoretically took it out of the floodplain in 1984. Based on that, Terrell signed off on it, saying that's, and besides, it never floods. Pizza place floods, like gangbusters, but not that place. So based on that, she signed off saying no flood wasn't a violation of the floodplain. Somebody at the plant, I think it was the planning board,
yes.
raised the issue, seeing the construction's going on, which is to put a house attached to the garage, and said, well, that's in the floodplain. And John Bergeron called me up and said, well, it's on the flood map, it's in the floodplain. The elevation that's on the flood map was pre the fill that was put in there. Huh? You like the fill?
No, it didn't. That's Dale.
So the long and short of it was that the 2,500 cubic yards of fill, thought it was okay based on that. It was all done before the ordinance. And figured it was okay, and all we needed to do was get an elevation change. So I had made arrangements to go down and get somebody to do an elevation certificate on the property, which I anticipated to be, you have to be 1 foot above a flood tide. 1 foot above what the floodplain is, or the floodway. It's two different things, floodplain and floodway. You can build in a floodplain, but you got to flood proof. You can't build in a floodway. Floodway is where most of the water goes down the middle. So went over to check it. I hired a surveyor who hasn't shown up yet to do the elevation, and went over to the property to check it. There's several applications on your phone that are pretty reliable to get elevation. So I used ones, put it on the ground, took the elevation reading. Looked to me like it was okay. Not by a hell of a lot, but it was okay by about 2 feet. So it was good enough. As I'm walking away, the contractor said, what are you doing? I said, well, we're checking the elevation because of flood ordinance. So he called Mike Farnsworth. Mike Farnsworth called me and said, well, there's a flood certification of the property. So, okay, can I get a copy? So I got the certification. The requirement under the ordinance is it has to clear by 1 foot. So if it's 947 feet, Gonna have 948 feet with the construction. Lo and behold, the pad on that building is about a foot short. So, in discussions internally with the town government, with the Bergeron, the town is going to support a request for a variance on the property based on everything I just described, to give them a full-blown permit for, as a variance, with the building up. It should go through okay. There's six reasons why what you need to do to get a variance. It's gonna fit all the reasons, not the least of which is the town screwed up with its assumptions. But the landowners did their own due diligence, and yes, it is at the flood elevation, but it's not a foot above the flood elevation. What's that? Okay, if you have any comments. Jillian, I'm talking about the situation on the floodplain determination on your property. What I said,
Okay,
we're gonna work with you and get a variance from the Board of Adjustment to make sure everything you've got is legal and accounted for. And I was explaining that from the town's point of view, we thought it did meet the criteria based on the 2,500 cubic yards. That's a lot of material that was put into the pad. So we believe that it met it, and we also believe that the maps were wrong because the maps were done before the fill wetting. So in order to rectify the situation, that we agreed at the town level, at least, to support the variance to make sure you're legal with what you're doing. I don't believe it's going to be a problem. I know Bergeron at this point, as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, had 2 ways to do it. So we'll probably succeed, and I'm already agreed to. I'll give you the background that you need to make the application. Legally, you have to make it, but the town will support it. And the Board of Selectmen that passes it, support that effort. So I'm just letting the public know that that's what's going on. It was based on reasonable understandings at the time. And we're talking about
Has that flood changed? That floodplain changed since 1984?
yeah. Ask me if anybody's done any engineering on it. We have.
Mhm.
So we did, as part of the flood mitigation program, we hired a firm.
Right.
To go in and do a complete hydrology study for the whole village. And we've got it down to 1 foot increments around the entire village.
He did a presentation right here.
We did a presentation here, and we've got all that data. The problem is, it's not legal in terms of what FEMA thinks about it. I mean, we could, and that's something I didn't think about doing. Well, it doesn't make any point at this point. So at this point, a surveyor has done a declaration. There's a difference of a foot. The easy solution at this point is just go get the variance. We could go back to Northern Headwaters. Is that what it is?
I think it was, yes.
Northern Headwaters did this analysis for us for flood proofing. And it's very extensive, and we could go check and see what the actual elevation is on that spot. Because they did a really, really thorough job doing it, but why bother? It's easier just to get the variance.
Does the variance do anything to the properties downtown? Does it affect any of the insurances or anything going forward?
Realistically, no, because the fact is, it's been there since 1984.
Okay.
So there isn't any changes since 84.
Right.
The way the house is going, same elevation.
There's a marker on the front lawn of the post office that the National Geological Society put in,
Yeah.
and that gives exact heights.
Well, surveyors, engineers and surveyors can do certifications, elevations.
Yeah, that's, but I'm just saying, if you need a reference point, there's one right on the front line. I find it by accident.
I got a certification thanks to Jillian from Sanborn, so I'm happy with what their declaration is. As I said, functionally, it doesn't make any difference. It's been this way since 84. Functionally, everybody thought it was not in floodplain since 1984. Functionally, it is technically at the floodplain level. So the distinction is whether it's a foot above it, and it's not. And there are criteria, like in any way, if the decision is made to grant the variance, does that impact properties? And the answer is no, it's already been there. So it's been there since pre-84, or, yeah, since 1984. Another one, would it cause an economic harm to the applicant if they don't get it? Hell, yes, and Julian's got half a house built.
Yeah.
So yes, it would make a big change. Would it impact the taxability, the tax base of that property? Yes, it would. Is it in the best interest of the community to issue the permit? Given the fact that there's no change to the community, given the fact that it would increase the tax base of the community, the answer is yes. So that's the type of stuff I'm going to be writing up for Jillian based on what the criteria. As long as it meets all those criteria, they should issue the variance. That's also a good reason for having the Board of Adjustment. Of course, they get carried away and say, hell no.
But we don't use the Board of Adjustments that often.
This will be the very first case, by the way, in Canaan where the Board of Adjustments done anything. So we're all looking forward to it, great anticipation.
And the Board of Adjustments gets the same pay as the Budget Committee.
Zero. Any other questions about McGrath? Got one in the executive session. I'll tell you about. I think both of you know that issue. I'm not sure.
Okay, we've got one in non-public.
One in that.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it. Thank you for being on Zoom. We appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
What's that?
Second.
We got one non-public.
After that.